Even if we make a dumb decision, He helps us. And even if somebody else makes a dumb decision, He helps us. And even if we confront bad circumstances that are just part of this fallen world, or even the devil himself, God is bigger and tougher and able to help us. Okay, Acts chapter 28, verse 1. And when they were escaped, they knew that the island was called Melita, and the barbarous people showed us no little kindness. Now this is King James language. They showed us no little kindness means they were kind to us. That's how we would say that. They showed us no little kindness, for they kindled a fire, and they received us every one, because of the present rain, because of the cold. Verse 3. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks, and had laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat, and fastened on his hand. Now a viper is a snake. Now I'm going to use this as an analogy or a symbol. A snake in the Bible sometimes can refer to Satan. This might have just been a natural circumstance. This might have been a satanic attack. It would be logical. I'm just going to use this to say that the devil can attack us sometimes. Or this natural world, things can happen that just attack us. But here's what we can't say. See, what if Paul would have said, I don't know why God made that snake jump out of the fire and bite me on the hand. It doesn't say God made the snake. God's not a puppet master. He's, here comes a snake. He doesn't do it. He's not making snakes jump out of the fire and bite you on the hand. Paul didn't do anything wrong. He didn't cause this. Nobody else did anything to cause this. It just happened. It's either the devil. We don't know why it happened. It either just happened or the devil might have motivated it. I tell you what, sometimes when people do some bad things, that's where I'm more sure the devil's motivating people. But anyway, the viper came out of the heat and fastened on his hand. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hanging on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt this man is a murderer, whom though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance hath not suffered to live. I love it how people are so smart. And they, oh, I know why that happened. They must have done something wrong. I know. That's how, I think people say that because they think it inoculates them. If it happened to you, then that means at least it didn't happen to me. That doesn't make any sense, but I think that's how it is. Listen, if you have never experienced this, well, you can just thank God for that. But, people are really, they think they're really wise. And they think, well, there must be sin in your life somewhere. Well, I say to people to say that, well, what about you? Maybe there's sin in your life somewhere. Well, let's not talk about that, But they think that because, listen to what they're saying. No doubt this man is a murderer and hath escaped the sea, vengeance. In other words, this happened because he did something wrong. Now, we know from reading that Paul didn't do anything wrong. In fact, Paul is doing his level best to listen to God and be faithful to what God told him. And he's doing a pretty good job at it. Nevertheless, even though he's doing what's right and he didn't do anything wrong, this viper came out of the heat. I'm sure that wasn't pleasant. I'm sure that was painful. I always think to myself, Paul had a choice here. Look at what it says in verse 5. He shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Boy, that's pretty good advice right there. He just shook it off and felt no harm. I think sometimes when some difficult situation happens, people don't know they can just shake it off and go on. They just accommodate to it, and claim it. Now it's mine. Go through life the rest of his life walking around with a snake hanging off his hand. Well, this is mine now. No, it's not yours. Shake it off and get rid of it, Snake fastens on your hand. I say shake it off and, get rid of it. When April went through some difficult situations about 10 years ago, a medical and health situation, and it was really tough. And we had the same kind of attitude from people that kind of look real wise at it. Well, this must be because you did something wrong, And everybody calls up with all their wise advice. All of April's sisters had all their wise advice. Well, you must not have had the right kind of diet. I'll tell you, these wise sisters, if you just eat more lettuce, and eat more of this. Listen, I had the healthy, and I'll vouch for that. I'm the one who eats in an unhealthy way. She is most healthy. She did everything right. She's like Paul here, But I had to. I was reading this one day, and when I picked her up from the hospital and brought her home, finally after all of that ordeal. And still, that wasn't really the end of the ordeal. But it's over now. Can I tell you that? It's over and done with now. God's faithful. But when we got in the car and came to come home, I said, I read this morning, this passage, and I said, listen, you need to do what Paul did. Shake it off and feel no harm. Just go on. Just shake it off and say, that's behind me, and we're going forward now. Now, this is kind of hard. Not everybody can see this. But this is what Paul did. He shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Here's what he didn't do. He didn't say, well, God sent it to me. What if he would have thought that God sent it? oh, he never would have shook it off, would he? See, this is why I'm telling you this today. It's really important that we understand the true nature of God. God didn't send it. It just came out of the fire, and he shook it off, felt no harm. Verse 6. Howbeit, they looked when he should have swollen or fallen down dead. They're always watching, you know. He should, any minute now, he's going to swell up and fall down dead. That's what they're thinking. But after they had looked a great while, I would just like to have seen this. I would just like to have seen them all sitting there watching him. Any minute now, he's going to swell up, fall down dead. Any minute now. But after they looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds. And now they said he was a god. I mean, first he's a murderer, now he's a god. I mean, which is it? How about just an ordinary man that believes God? How about that? Okay, let's see. I got one more passage to read to you about God as our Father. Go to Luke's Gospel, chapter 15, just for a second. And this will be brief. Luke chapter 15. God's attitude towards us. That's what we're talking about. Okay, Luke chapter 15, verse 11. This is a familiar story, but just because it's familiar doesn't mean we can't read it again. Verse 11. Luke 15, verse 11. And he, that's Jesus, said, a certain man had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided to them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country. And there he wasted his substance with riotous living. Riotous living, by the way, means wild living. He wasted what he received from the father with wild, loose living. Verse 14. And when he had spent all, think about this. He took what would have been his portion of the inheritance and he wasted it. He didn't invest it. He wasted it on wild living, and he spent everything. He just totally wasted everything. He spent it all. There arose a mighty famine in the land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him to the fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husks that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself... Now let me just stop right there. What does it mean, this expression, that he came to himself? Just ponder that for a moment. What does it mean when he came to himself? Well, what I take it to mean is when he began to see, when he came to the realization of what was really true, what was really true about him. Or say another way, when he remembered who he really was. You see, up until this time, he hasn't mentioned his father. But when he remembered who he really was, when he came to himself, the first thing he said is, how many hired servants of my father's? He remembered his father. He came to himself and he remembered, I am the son of my father. He said, how many hired servants of my father's have enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? And then he makes a decision here. I will arise and go to my father. Notice, when he came to himself, he remembered something that he had evidently, either deliberately or for whatever reason, forgotten about. That is his relationship to his father. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and I am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. Let's stop right there for a moment. Now, we would all agree that this son basically did everything wrong. He made some way bad decisions. In fact, we can't really commend him for anything. He has been totally selfish, totally done everything wrong. He took what he had from the father and he wasted it. He spent it all. And what we would imagine that we would read next, what we would imagine in our minds, we understand, of course, what this parable or what this story is referring to. We understand that the man is a person and the father is God in this story. And he has wasted what he received from the father. And what we would imagine in the religious part of our minds is that the father... See, the text, Jesus hadn't said anything yet about the father. What this story is really about is the attitude of the father towards people who make mistakes and sin and do things wrong.